one of my last questions for you, let's say this is implemented, right? Let's just imagine for a minute we do have federal workers who do quit. How do they move forward in attracting talent when they do have to fully go into the office?
Well, I think, Elon Musk's approach to this has always been that, he believes that if you're truly, the kind of worker that he wants to have at one of his companies, you're going to want to come to the office. So I think he feels like and Vivek Ramaswamy and a lot of people, that the government workforce is so bloated that a lot of people can leave and you're still going to have a lot of good people there. And the culture that's created are going to attract more people to the office. So I think that's the belief. And this is a very kind of this whole approach of that they're taking is very radical in some ways. And a lot of people are interested to see how it's going to turn out, because I think there's a pretty broad consensus that there's probably more government workers than there maybe need to be.
No, they're not going to want to come back into the office, because then they don't want to be surrounded by all that bullshit. This is the problem with the mindsets of these billionaires. They think that everybody has the same mindset as them when it comes to exploitation. And then, we want to be exploited. We want to come to the office. We want to have to spend all our money on gas and try to travel to and from the office. We anticipate getting those pizza parties for just a pat on the back on a good job. In an office, a center of mundane tasks, mediocre coffee, inspirational posters, tight quotas, office politics, annoying gossip, and micromanaging bosses. If you could leave and work from home, would you? Make sure to take the poll. This is what the pandemic gave us. It gave us a gift to escape the issues surrounding being at the office. It afforded us more time to get ready for the morning, less money to pay on gas and travel, less wear and tear on your car. You had to pay less for childcare, eating out for lunch. You actually even saved money on laundry because you didn't have to wash your work attire. Plus, you got more time to spend with your family and less interpersonal stress from dealing with workmates. But corporations are wanting workers back in the office. Why? Well, let me show you. Now, this tweet is no longer on Twitter, but I got the screenshot and I just want to share this. So at the height, I remember this tweet got over 250,000 likes because it's true. Let's enlarge. It says, casual reminder that a huge reason that they don't want you to work from home anymore is because in terms of capitalism, it makes dozens of skyscrapers and office buildings they built obsolete, impractical, unprofitable, and generally a bad financial investment. Like, seriously, imagine what a city like New York City or LA, Los Angeles, places that are practically designed around a vast quantity of these sort of buildings would look like if everyone who could work from home did. I want you to think about that. Because that's why they want you back in the office. There's a little bit more detail about that. So let me share this video about going back into the office, right? And this is a video that is entitled Why
Companies
Hate Work from Home. Let me fast forward a little bit to the primary reason. Hang on, let me make sure. All right.
Now, let's get to the real reason. Let me tell y'all, okay, you've waited however many minutes this video is going. Let me tell you the real reason. It's the tax deductions, baby. Y'all know Noelle Randall is a real estate entrepreneur. I absolutely love real estate. Things that have to do with real estate excite me. But one of the reasons why real estate is exciting for so many people is because of the tax deductions. Well, many of these companies have received numerous and big tax deductions for the real estate that they have and having those employees come into those offices. Okay. There's the leases on commercial properties. Think about that. They have those leases and they want to continue to get those leases. That is important for not only the company, but the company, those commercial companies that own that real estate, the property management companies that run that commercial real estate. That's revenue for them. So you get local, county, state, and even federal tax deductions for having a company with employees that are in the office and how many people go to the office. That is super important. And I'm going to actually share with you a real example that I saw with my own two eyes. I was working for a company called Movement Mortgage, and this was, I think, like one of the last jobs that I had where I was gaining my confidence. Like, I'm going to get out of the workforce, but I really wasn't ready. I was still kind of a chicken. And that was really because, just my mindset. I just really wasn't all the way there. This is 2015, 2016. So, but Movement Mortgage was actually based out of Norfolk, Virginia. And so when I first went to work there, we were working in this kind of old office that, was in Norfolk. But guess what? They actually, I'm not even going to get into all of it, maybe even in Virginia Beach, but the city of Norfolk actually gave Movement Mortgage. And again, this is public records. I don't feel like I'm sharing anything, crazy. The city of Norfolk gave them a ton of money to take a rundown JCPenney in the mall, okay, in the Norfolk Mall. And again, you can look this up, for Movement Mortgage to bring all of their operations there from the Virginia Beach office. And it was an amazing office. It was beautiful. They completely renovated an old JCPenney that had went out of business. And we literally worked at the mall. Okay, the mall was like half empty. This is Norfolk, Virginia. And this was, again, Norfolk, Virginia's economic development department. Okay, so there's tons of economic development departments within counties and cities and local governments that are working to bring employers to their area. And they give them really great subsidies. They give them tax benefits. They even sometimes give them outright money, okay, to renovate and things like that. So I'm not
Sorry. So here's the thing. Let me stop right there. They're giving tax breaks, subsidies, and outright money to some of these businesses that are already making money. They're already doing all right, right? And yet, in some of these cities, we still have a homeless problem. We still have some issues, with housing. Some of these schools aren't doing too good. They're dilapidated buildings and kids aren't getting the education that they need because of funding from property taxes. But yet some of these companies that are actually doing really well, they're getting tax subsidies instead of the people who are on the lower rung of the economic ladder. They're not getting a damn thing, or they're getting very little, but yet these companies, these corporations get these tax subsidies and tax breaks, even though they're doing well. Y'all already know what I want to go with this one. Okay, let's continue.
I'm going to give you all of the details because I don't necessarily know all the details of Movement Mortgages move, but I'm going to tell you unequivocally it was really beneficial to Movement Mortgage to be able to move to that. And it was very beneficial to the city of Norfolk to have all of those employees. And again, at the time, I was one of them, to go there, and we start going to restaurants for lunch. We start getting gas in that area. We start coming in that area. We're buying things. We're shopping during our lunch. There's a lot of economic activity that happens when you bring employees into an office. So although you as a worker say, I don't want to work in an office, let me be 100% honest with you. As the employer, that's a really, really big incentive to make your employees come to the office. The fact that you can get this real estate and you get these tax deductions for having employees in your office. So now, as a company, they have to weigh out, do I want these tax benefits and these subsidies and these different incentives that I'm being offered by local governments and state governments? Or do I just want to make my employees happy? Or do I want to just try to make them happy at the office? Well, in this case, we know that corporate interest has won out, and all of your bigger corporations are saying, get your butts back to the office. We need you in these offices. We need these spaces filled. We need the economic activity that is caused by people going into the office. That is a really, really big deal. And you're going to see this. You're going to see more and more of them pushing people back into offices because there is a multiplier effect. So again, when you work in that office, not only do you have to drive in the commute, you're spending more money on gas, but now that you're at that workplace, you are an economic, you are a catalyst to growth in that area. You go to the lunches, you go to those restaurants, you go shopping during your lunch, you're buying things, you have daycare in the area. Just think of all of the different multiplier effects that happens from one employee going into the office. So then just multiply that by thousands, and how much economic activity is generated to the other businesses around that office. That is the real reason why companies hate work from home and why they want you back in their office. So let me talk to you.
When she says the word catalyst, change the word to consumer. They want you to consume in that given area. That's what it is. Make no mistake. They want you to continue to consume. That's why they want you back in the office. In the end, it's about capitalists wanting more money so that your interests don't really matter as long as the shareholders get more in their dividend checks. You're not necessarily getting paid more to come into the office, but the owner class does. This is a part of the class war. But corporations are winning at the workers' expense. In New York City, the drivers are getting a congestion surcharge of $9 if they're in Manhattan between the hours of 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. How will this harm workers? Let's look at the article. So it's crazy. It's crazy out in these streets. They're trying to charge. All right, let's take a look at this article. It says Manhattan prepares for congestion pricing housing charges in 2025. So now it's 2025. Told you it's going to be live. All right. It says Manhattan is poised for a busy 2025, from the rollout of congestion pricing to the reopening of iconic cultural landmarks and changes in real estate. And starting January 5th, which is this Sunday, drivers entering Manhattan below 60th Street will face a congestion toll of at least $9 during most of the day, marking the start of New York's long-anticipated congestion pricing program. So this is from Mark Levin. Honestly, crossing Midtown at rush hour is not much faster than walking speed. He expressed hopes that the program will bring reduced traffic, faster emergency responses, and increased funding for mass transit projects, particularly the subway system. It is why you see such frequent delays in the system, which is a current lack of funding. Some business owners, however, worry that the toll will lead to higher delivery costs, which could be passed along to customers. Levin also highlighted the borough's housing affordability crisis as a top concern. Says that the rents in Manhattan are totally out of reach. Median rents in Manhattan hit $4,295 in October of 2024, representing a 20% increase since January 2021. So this is something that is happening within the city of New York, that they are trying to increase by, if you're riding between 60th Street in Manhattan, in Midtown, then you're going to be paying $9 just for congestion pricing. So when they're telling you to come back to the office, guess what you're going to also have to pay? Especially in places like New York. And guess what? What goes in New York, it starts to happen in other cities. So don't be surprised if this starts happening in places like Boston, Chicago, Seattle, LA, and then it starts to go into the medium-sized cities, right? Starts happening in Dallas, in New Orleans. Starts happening in places like Cleveland, Orlando, Tampa. It's gonna hit. But there are some people who are fighting against it. And I want to share that too. So this came out a day later. So let's get into this. It says the controversial congestion pricing toll appeared ready to take effect as scheduled on January 5th after two different federal district court judges on December 23rd refused to issue preliminary injunctions blocking it. But after encountering backlash, Governor Kathy Hochul is ditching the plan that would have allowed the MTA to hike the $9 toll by 25% to $11.25 on days dubbed gridlock alert days. There were 20 such days on the calendar in the current year. Hochul says that under no circumstances would she allow the toll to be hiked, even through the MTA. In a little noticed part of the plan, she retained the right to do so. The New York Post has played up the overlook clause in the congestion pricing plan with a page one story on December 26th, triggering an immediate and furious backlash. Kathy Hochul is the Grinch who stole Christmas. That's from Mike Lauer, a Republican from the Hudson Valley region who just reelected to a second term. It says, despite Hochul switching plans to the surging prices, the regular congestion pricing is in the fast lane, ready to go live on January 5th. Although neither federal judge dismissed the lawsuits from opponents in their entirety, the refusal to issue preliminary injunctions all but guaranteed it will take hold on January 5th, charging drivers $9 to enter Manhattan below 60th Street between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m., 7 days a week, 365 days in a year. And unlike the congestion pricing in London, that was a model for New York City's plan, there is no discount for car-owning residents living inside the zone. There is also a cause for a tax credit for low-income residents earning less than $60,000 a year. Says United Federation for Teachers President Michael Mulgrew, Staten Island Borough President Vito Fasella, and the Trucking Association of New York sought the injunction blocking the start of the toll from Judge Louis Layman, but he declined to grant it. So these are some of the gory details about it, but ultimately they're trying to start this congestion pricing. And really, to be honest with you, this is going to be heavily affecting really the low-income people who live and work near Manhattan. And so this is also another war on the working class. This is part of the class war, right? This is what their excuse is. It says this will reduce traffic in Manhattan and fund long overdue investments in public transit while keeping costs lower for New Yorkers who drive in the city. We have spoken to the MTA, made it clear under no circumstances will we allow this discretionary 25% surcharge to gridlock days to be used. It says pollution and traffic congestion will be worse on the poor, working and middle-class neighborhoods of the city, and these same families are still being asked to shoulder the cost. No one disputes that New York needs to invest in public transit, but doing it on the backs of the working people in New York City is wrong and tone deaf. So yes, it is going to be tone deaf. It's going to be absolutely wrong to have the working class people shoulder this, because these are the people who are actually going to these jobs. It's not just the white collar jobs, it's the blue collar jobs, the people who are working to clean these offices, the baristas that will be making your coffee, the people who are working in the delis, the delicatesses, right? These are the people that are going to also have to shoulder this cost. You're going to have to pay $9 each day just to get to and from work while you're driving. So that is wear and tear on your car, right? Because that stop and start traffic is also bad on your brakes, right? Then on top of that, you also got to pay for the gas. And on top of that, you got to pay $9. And then what if you're coming from outside? Like, what if you have to use the LIE, the Long Island Expressway, right? What do you have to come through the Holland Tunnel? Would you got to pay like $15? Is it still $15 to go through the Holland Tunnel in order to get into Manhattan? I know it's $15. It's probably $25 knowing them, because they hike up things sky high. So it's like you got to pay that. Like, let's say you're living in Newark and you're traveling in from Newark, to get in. Or what if you're traveling from Connecticut? It's crazy. And so now you have to pay more money in order to be able just to get into the city, all because the bosses want you to come back into the office because they want to get those tax subsidies because of the real estate. You see why people want to work from home? It's crazy. It's crazy on its face. It doesn't make any damn sense. So this is why other people, groups of people, and on top of that, what about restaurants, right? Well, if you're a truck driver having to deliver to a restaurant, well, that truck driver or that company is going to have to pay that surcharge every single day in order to deliver to these restaurants. Guess who's going to pass that on to consumers? So guess what? You as a worker, if you have to go to a restaurant to eat while you're still in the city in that same area, you're going to have to end up paying more for your food too, because the money in order to deliver the goods to those restaurants is going to go up, which means that their prices are going to go up. It's sad. And the thing is, it's like, my question would be, okay, if you guys are going to be charging these people a $9 surcharge just between the hours of 6 and 9 p.m. within Manhattan, are you now between the hours of 6 and 9 p.m., are you going to make it absolutely free for people to not have to pay a fare to ride the subway or the buses in Manhattan? But I don't see anything about that. Oh, but you still have to pay that fare in order to get on the subway. Meanwhile, you got the NYPD, one of the highest paid police departments in the world, that are making billions of dollars. They're getting billions of dollars from the city just to watch people jump over turnstiles and then arrest them. For how much is it for a fare? It was $2.50. Could be saving some money without actually having to pay police to watch the turnstiles. It's crazy. So with that being said, I want to share something because I know Roger lives in New York and he has some thoughts. I spoke to him and he's gave me permission to read this. So I'm going to read his thoughts. He said, there's something you need to know about the lost money during the COVID lockdowns. Those who commute into the city via the Long Island Railroad, New Jersey Transit, or the Metro North from upstate and Connecticut got used to working from home. They found out that they loved it because they got a savings raise and more sleep. No waking up earlier. No spending money on childcare because they're already home. No spending money on transportation because they're working from home. No spending money on lunch when they can walk to their refrigerator. This goes in concert with what that lady was talking about, where they want you to come into the office for their tax benefit because the government gives the companies money tax subsidies because they know that they're going to drive up the local business around the job site. Whether it's stopping for a coffee or an egg sandwich on the way, going to one of these restaurants during lunch, going to the bar after hours with their friends who live in the city. Is that lady in the video that says that you don't got bodies in the office seats, you're not contributing to the local economy, so you get your joint revoked. Mayor Adams a few years ago was crying about the need for you to come back to the city to support our essential workers. Those who lived outside the city in the suburbs or in another state like Connecticut or New Jersey said, F you, mayor. Number one, you're not my mayor or my local. You're not my mayor. Your local economy doesn't mean anything to me. Two, why should I support your essential workers and help my boss with their tax benefit when I got essential workers where I paid property taxes at the home that I own? I could go right down the street to Bob's Deli and support essential workers here. I can go to the bar in my local community where I pay property taxes as well after hours. I can go to the restaurant where I pay local taxes, and there are people in my community that I know that I'm supporting. I get more bang for my tax on my property by supporting my community than I do helping my boss with their tax benefits as I'm spending more money to jump on the train to commute into the city, spend on childcare to see my kid before I get home from work, and pay those expensive ass prices in New York City where I pay less where I'm at. So of course, these are white collar jobs and some black collar jobs, AKA information technology. Information technology jobs, there will be times where you have to show up on the site because there's something physical that has to be done. But if it's nothing physical that needs to be done, then you can remote in. However, for the people who have to be there, free public service is definitely something that they can use. So thank you very much to Roger for that. It's not just private corporations, though, that are trying to push for people to come back to the office. It's also government agencies that are also floating the idea of ending remote work. Let's talk about Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk. Two irrelevant billionaires that really get on my damn nerves, but gotta talk about them.
Talk politics now. A recent proposal to require federal employees to return to the office full time has sparked some debate about how to best streamline government operations while also ensuring effective public service. Vivek Ramaswamy, he's the head of the new Department of Government Efficiency, argued that mandating in-office attendance could encourage voluntary departures among federal workers. In an interview, he said the proposal could be a way to address what he says is a bloated federal bureaucracy. Let's bring in Scott Baradell. He's a spokesperson for Stanley Systems. Thank you so much for joining us on Live Now from Fox to continue this conversation.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so this proposal from Ramaswamy here, do you think this would achieve his goal of these voluntary departures from the government? And if that did happen, what could we expect to see?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think that where we've seen it in the private sector where this has happened, you've had a lot of return to office mandates that led to a lot of voluntary departures. And it's a great way to reduce your workforce without having to pay severance and things like that, which I think is something that Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk have in mind.
Is going back.
So let's stop there. So it's not really about actual efficiency. Let's be honest. Let's keep it a buck, right? It's just about reducing workers in government agencies. But they never talk about the budget for the Department of Defense. Why? Because Elon has government contracts that are most likely tied to the Defense Department. So this is how you reduce spending while saving face. Also, this pushing more workers into the human capital stock of unemployed workers so that corporations have a larger pool of workers competing for jobs that they can pay lower rates for those jobs. Workers desperate who left the government now have to accept lower wages in the private sector, and this keeps corporations flush with an army of desperate labor to pick for them. It's nasty work. Let's continue.
Back to the office, though, really all that more productive than remote work. I know you guys conducted a survey. What did that say? What were your findings there?
Well, I think there's a lot of research that shows that the collaboration that you get in office, if it's really collaboration as opposed to just driving somewhere and being in the cubicle and driving home, if that's really built into the company culture, it can be a really positive thing. But the thing that was really interesting about the survey, and Stanley Systems helps businesses with printers, copiers, computers, it's office technology, so all for getting people back in the office. But what the survey showed is that the majority of Gen Z workers want to be in an office. Many of them never have had a chance because of COVID, and they're excited about it. So let's take advantage of that excitement.
Oh, time out. No. I call bullshit. On that. These guys. Gen Z can't afford to go back and forth just like that, and having your manager over your shoulder isn't fun. I highly doubt that the majority of them really want to get that office experience. This is Fox News trying to manufacture your consent and manipulating viewers to think that what's good for the owner class is good for the workers. As we spoke about earlier, this is not the case. They want to do this for government workers so that it influences the private sector and forces more employees back to work as well. This is all a coordinated class war attack. Look, just keep your eyes, peep game on this. My goodness. Let's continue.
Yeah, so if this does lead to those large amounts of people leaving their government positions, I guess what impact could that have? Would that send a message about the future of remote work and leading to a future of maybe even going in the office full time or not?
Yeah, I think what you have in many cases is a hybrid environment. And I think if you look at workers across the board, over 80% across generations prefer an environment that's at least hybrid, say it's 3 days a week in the office. Maybe they don't want 5. So there's a broad consensus. And most companies would rather have their workers in the office. They've got big investments in commercial real estate. It's been a long history of believing in the value of bringing people together. So everybody's kind of on the same page. It's just a matter of how you want to go about doing it. Is it going to be presented as, here's the punishment, you have to come back in the office, versus here's all the reasons why it's going to be a great thing for you to come back to the office?
Could we talk?
Jesus Christ, I can't stand the way these people try to frame shit. It's a good thing I wrote my notes. Your job does not have to be your passion or your life. So as long as you get the work done, that should be what matters. Oh my gosh. Let me continue this.
Talk real quick, though. Are there any potential risks to Ramaswamy's proposal?
Hang on. Elon saying that they should want to go to the office doesn't mean shit. If they can get the work done, that's what matters. Here's a truth that I think that you all should think about. Your work should fund your life, not be your life. I'm going to repeat that. Your work should fund your life, not be your life. This is the issue with the capitalist mindset. They want you so engulfed in your work that it becomes your life. But that work doesn't benefit you. It benefits the shareholders. This is why, for instance, the arts are neglected, because it's not as profitable for the capitalists. Self-expression isn't a profitable business model. Let's finish this.
Risk. Well, the thing is, the very top, the creme de la creme of workers, they can do whatever they want. So they can work from home, they can work from wherever they want, and you're going to lose them because they can go anywhere. They have lots of choices. So if you're talking about the bulk of workers that aren't at that, maybe at top 5% of workers, yeah, you can have policies like this and not worry about the impact. But you're going to lose some real talent at the top because they have so many choices in terms of where they can work, choose their own environment.
Yeah, and we're seeing this surge of people who want to work remotely ever since COVID happened. Is that in part because people got a taste of it during COVID and they're like, I like being able to be home? Is that why we're seeing such a surge here in remote work?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people thought, oh, well, we've always worked in the office, we have to. Then when they realized that they could work at home and be effective, they were like, why do I have to do this commute? It's just kind of the experience of doing it made them realize, oh, it's possible. And a lot of companies are like, wow, it didn't really hurt our productivity. But now as we look at return to office, you have people hired during COVID who were hired from different cities because it could be remote, or they have small children at home and they can't maybe afford daycare. These situations where they were built for in their work style and everything was built for remote, and now coming into a return to office mandate, they simply, even if they wanted continued working for the office and coming into the office, they're in a different city, they've got small children at home. There are a lot of people that build their lifestyles around remote work, and now they have to change.
One of the things I want to bring up also is he said that it did not reduce productivity. And that's true. There are some studies that actually showed that productivity actually increased with working from home. But they still want you to come in. They still don't want you to work from home. Because ultimately, it's about the benefit of the shareholders. It's about the benefit for the people at the top. It's not about you, the worker. Even though you're doing the same, if not better amounts or more productive at home than you would be at the office. And plus, you don't have a manager watching you over your shoulder. Let's continue.
One of my last questions for you, let's say this is implemented, right? Let's just imagine for a minute, we do have federal workers who do quit. How do they move forward in attracting talent when they do have to fully go into the office?
Well, I think, Elon Musk's approach to this has always been that, he believes that if you're truly, the kind of worker that he wants to have at one of his companies, you're going to want to come to the office. So I think he feels like and Vivek Ramaswamy and a lot of people that the government workforce is so bloated that a lot of people can leave and you're still going to have a lot of good people there. And the culture that's created are going to attract more people to the office. So I think that's the belief. And this is a very kind of this whole approach of that they're taking is very radical in some ways. And a lot of people are interested to see how it's going to turn out, because I think there's a pretty broad consensus that there's probably more government workers than there maybe need to be.
No, they're not going to want to come back into the office because then they don't want to be surrounded by all that bullshit. This is the problem with the mindsets of these billionaires. They think that everybody has the same mindset as them when it comes to exploitation. And then, we want to be exploited. We want to come to the office. We want to have to spend all our money on gas and try to travel to and from the office. We anticipate getting those pizza parties for just a pat on the back on a good job. Oh my gosh. These guys just do not get it. And this is now Fox News trying to tell you, well, see, it's good. It's good that you come back to the office. It's good that you have to spend money on childcare now. It's good that you have to play office politics again. Aren't you excited? You know, and that's one of the things I think that a lot of people just don't think about is people like Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy really are doing this because they want to benefit their corporate buddies. So then it forces the private sector, of course, so see, look, the government workers, you're not working at home anymore. So you guys have to work. You guys have to work in the office now, too. This leads to solutions because I think that a lot of people are now starting to move away from the cities, and it's going to be a real benefit to us, workers who live a more balanced life. So one of the reasons why there's a lot more demand for things like high-speed internet, so that people can work from home. So let's take a look at that because I want to get into that as well. Because more people are moving out of the area. So it says broadband access can boost rural jobs and remote work. So let me get into this really quick. It says as working from home has become the new normal of the last 3 years due to the coronavirus pandemic, there's now a greater need to adopt fiber broadband internet services, otherwise known as high-speed internet in rural areas. High-speed internet can make it possible for rural residents to find jobs and work from home, and employers may have better results hiring, onboarding, and retaining workers in regions outside of metropolitan areas. According to an Information Technology and Innovation Foundation report, rural coverage usually lags behind in urban coverage because rural areas are less densely populated and thus therefore more expensive to serve per household. In 2019, only 62% of the US population had adopted fiber broadband internet service, even though 98% of households can access high-speed internet. So the recruitment process for rural job candidates takes extra time and effort for businesses because they need to educate and possibly support these candidates for remote work. So Tanya Mead says, when interviewing rural candidates for remote jobs, my clients often experience static drop lines, frozen screens, voice and video misalignment. Clients have turned down rural remote candidates because they're unstable connection. You're limited to what you can do at home if you don't have high-speed internet. So this is one of the issues that a lot of people who are in rural areas have. And so, you have to have at least 25 megabits per second download speed and then a 3 megabits per second upload speed in order for it to be considered high-speed internet. So there is actually, a push to fund more high-speed internet in rural areas for people who work in rural areas, people who work remotely. It says in 2021, Congress passed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, allocating $65 billion for states and municipalities to deploy fiber optic broadband internet to unserved or underserved populations. Specifically, a new law funnels $46.5 billion through the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment BEAD program at the National Telecommunications Information Administration, the NTIA, to supply more robust internet service to these populations. Angela Ty Bennett, Digital Equity Director for the NTIA, said that being able to provide a high-speed internet connection for people who seek employment is vital to building a robust workforce. So it says high-speed internet connections can connect people who may have challenges with transportation, childcare, or mobility to better paying job opportunities. So this is something that is becoming more and more necessary for people who work from home. And this is why a lot of people who are working from home are actually trying to now get into rural areas, because number one, it's cheaper. Number two, you can actually have more time for, for yourself. You have a better work-life balance. So this can benefit you if you work in a low-cost area while making money that's from a company in a more high-cost area. And you know what? That helps. It's not a big solution because many workers can't work remotely, but for the white-collar workers, this can be a viable solution to lower cost and bring more economic sustainability in rural areas. If you're in a rural area and can make more, then you're more likely to spend more at the local grocery store, the coffee shop, the gas station, the restaurant, etc. Unfortunately, here in the United States, internet service providers, or ISPs, which are mostly private corporations themselves that put profits first, will throttle internet speeds in order to charge more. But then they hold back as well. In other developed countries, they are breaking records in internet speeds that would be a huge boom to here in the United States. I want to take you guys a look through what they're also doing in Japan, because a lot of times, we talk about internet speeds here, but in places like Japan, they're whooping our butts. So let me get this here. So this is out of New Atlas. It says internet speed records shattered at 178 terabits per second. So this came out in 2020. This is 4 years old. It says the fastest internet speed in the world has been clocked at an incredible 178 terabits per second. The fast enough download to the entire Netflix library in under a second. Engineers in the UK and Japan have developed new ways to modulate light before it's beamed down optical fibers, allowing for much wider bandwidth than usual. That new top speed is insane feat. It's 17,800 times faster than the current fastest internet connections available to consumers. So 10 gigabits per second in places like Japan, US, and New Zealand. Even NASA can't compete with its 400 gigabytes per ESNet. It also leaves other experimental devices in the dust, including a photonic chip developed in Australia that clocked still impressive 44 terabytes per second just a few months ago, and it beats the previous record holder, a Japanese team with 150 terabytes per second, by almost 20%. So you have these countries that are literally developing internet speeds that are much faster, that would facilitate better work from home conditions. But unfortunately, because they don't want you to work from home because it benefits them, then of course they're not going to do that. And then, of course, they're not going to want you to have faster internet speeds. Let me ask you this. Did you know that the United States is not even in the top 10 countries of internet speeds? Let's take a look. So this is World Population Review. Let's take a look here. So it says the top 10 countries with the fastest mobile internet speeds. We're not going to look at that because we're talking about home internet. It says the top 10 countries with the fastest broadband internet speeds in megabits per second. Top 10 countries. So the UAE, United Arab Emirates, 398.51 megabits per second. Qatar has 344 megabits. Kuwait. So the first three are literally Arab countries. Arab countries that have less money than us, and yet they are able to have faster internet speeds than we do. The top three are Arab countries. Now, next is South Korea. Then the Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, Saudi Arabia, Bulgaria, and Luxembourg. The top 10 countries with internet speeds, and not the United States anywhere in sight. Why? Because they want you to come back to the office. Because it's all benefit for who? The people at the top. So let me share this with you guys, because a lot of Americans are now leaving. A lot of them are now leaving the cities and living in remote areas, and they're doing well. Oh, I wanted to share something else, but this is also a good point. It says working from home increases productivity. This is an article that talks about research from home. Research from Ergotron says researchers polled 1,000 remote and hybrid employees about the productivity, wellness, and other facets. They found that working from home improves work-life balance, increases productivity, and fosters healthier lifestyles. It's a win-win situation that workers relish for its flexibility. But this is one of the reasons why they're trying to leave the cities and go into more rural areas. This is out of Business Insider. This says young Americans are going country, reversing decades-long trend of moving to cities. So, it says in recent years, younger professionals have been bucking a long-time trend of their age group, moving to cities. Now with flexible work arrangements and high housing costs, many are foregoing more densely populated areas in favor of rural America. Those are bringing bigger houses, lower prices, and a different pace of life, and their own new challenges. So in recent analysis of a census data by Hamilton Lombard, a demographer at the University of Virginia, found that 63% of rural counties and small metros experience increases in their populations of 25 to 44-year-olds between 2020 and 2023, compared to 27% between 2010 and 2013. Northern Georgia, the Mountain West, and New England were rural regions where particularly strong population growth among young Americans. The 10 counties that saw the biggest influxes of younger adults were largely rural. The most populated of all those areas is Hays County, Texas, in the suburbs of Austin, which had a population of around 280,500 in 2023. Musselshell County, which is the least populous, have just 5,308 people as of 2023. So this is a chart talking about the ages from 25 to 44, the top 10 counties young Americans have migrated to. So as you can see, 38% jump in Custer County, 37% in Kaufman County, 34% in Broadwater County, and 29% in Dawson County, and then 28% in Rockwall County, respectively. But there's a huge jump because they're able to work from home. So that's a big shift from pre-pandemic patterns from 1980 to 2020. White-collar workers increasingly moved from densely populated areas per Lombard's analysis. That trend was expected to continue until the pandemic and the rise of remote work. Since 2020, Lombard found rural areas and smaller cities have attracted that younger workforce and the highest rate in nearly a century. So this is showing another chart there. So they're talking about how people are now moving from places like from Washington, California, and Minnesota. So it says Smith, the manager and roaster at a local Peregrine Coffee, said that the area has traditionally skewed older, but saw an influx of younger workers over the last few years. Smith said that the area's new residents are buying homes even as the costs have gone up. To me, it's more like the people that are moving here have a romanticized version of what it is to live up here. So, there's that challenge there. And a lot of people are, moving, but there has its own challenge here. And remember what I said about intrastate gentrification. Well, here we go. It says recently rentals have gone really fast, adding to that rents on average have increased from about $750 in 2019 to well over $1,000 monthly. A more stark comparison is some of the county's single family homes, many of which were built in the late 1970s and early 1980s, while they sold for about $100,000 in 2017. They range from $390,000 to $400,000 today. So this is the part that a lot of people are realizing, right? It's just that while, they're making more and they're able to work more remotely, but they're moving out to the rural areas, it's also causing the cost of living to go up in rural areas too. So I do have my concerns with that as well. My primary concern is that the gentrification of rural areas and the rising cost of living in these areas. Because the thing is like the people who have been there, they're not making that much. So if somebody who's making, let's say you're making $40,000, $45,000, $50,000 and you're barely surviving, but the area is rural, so you're doing kind of okay. You have a bunch of people who are making six figures because they're working remotely. They start to live in that area. Guess what? Everybody's going to start raising their prices, and then you're going to start getting priced out of either apartments or renting a house. And so then you're not going to be able to live there. So that's one of the primary concerns about an area like that. And I have my own personal view of a solution. But one of the things that I want to do also, because there's another variable that hasn't been talked about that I want to share as well, was something that was taught to me by Roger. And I want to make sure I read this part. He said, this is really important, how remote work and the need for broadband is going to affect the politics of our state, eventually the nation, in the nation, because big cities are no longer going to be running the agenda for an entire state. People are going to just spread out evenly throughout each state. Just like how you get more legislative districts in densely populated areas, once they start spreading throughout the state, you'll get better representation, more democratized representation. For example, downstate New York, very densely populated in the state legislature. Assembly District 23 through 87, that is 64 assembly districts in one city called New York City. That is out of 150 assembly districts. So that's more than half to pass bills that are out of the assembly with some to spare. They don't even need those of us out here in the Long Island suburbs or north of the Bronx. There are 25 state Senate districts that are all located within New York City boundaries. So that's 7 short of being able to pass something out of the New York State Senate, seeing that 32 constituents as a majority seeing that 32 constituencies as a majority, because we have 63 Senate districts throughout the state. So you see how a densely populated city like New York City drives the politics of the state. Of course, you got some of the senators upstate, which will usually be senators from other densely populated cities like Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, and Albany on board. Maybe 1 or 2 out of here in the Long Island suburbs. But we have 26 congressional districts that we sent to Washington, D.C. Out of that 26, 15 are located in New York City, Long Island suburb area, which is more than half of who we are sending to Washington. You see what I mean? The densely populated drives the politics of the state and Washington. And so this goes into what's being said, especially about what's being said is essentially, the conditions that are of a concern within, not just states that are more rural, but also the rural parts of a state that are less densely populated. But as people move out into these areas, it's going to be more spread out, which I would like to see more spread out. But at the same time, I do not want to see the gentrification and pushes the people who actually live there out. What I think would be best would be to foster and create more worker cooperatives in these areas so that the money doesn't go to the top, but spreads out among all the workers so that the people who move to rural areas and the workers do better. Co-op grocery stores, co-op farms, gas stations, restaurants, and recreation establishments, etc., would affect the workers in a positive way rather than a negative way. Pushing for citizen ballot initiatives in these areas could beat the capitalists to the punch and grow worker cooperatives in areas in which would encourage it in bigger cities. So goes to rural areas, so then it starts to be encouraged in the cities, in the municipalities. And so when it comes to workers working remotely, I actually am in favor of that because I want workers to have a work-life balance. The problem is that because we're in a class war, the cappies don't like that. They don't want to see you have a good work-life balance. Because ultimately it's about their bottom line. It's about the shareholders. It's about the people at the top. They're gonna drag you back, kicking and screaming. They're gonna drag you back to the office, where you get to have that mundane, that mid coffee, where you have to, play office politics in order to at least try to somewhat get ahead or keep your job. Not to mention, let me ask some of the women, especially in the chat, if you were able to work from home, you don't have to worry about sexual harassment now, do you? If you're working from home. That's another variable you don't have to worry about. Because that happens in office politics too. These are the things that people don't think about, or not people don't think about. The ruling class, they know this, but they don't care. And so I honestly really do hope if you can work from home, do it. But at the same time, try to encourage worker ownership, especially if you live in an area that's less densely populated, that's more rural. Look, if you can pull some of these workers to the side, let's say you work in a rural area, or you live in a rural area and you're working from home, and you go to a grocery store, you start telling the guy that's stocking shelves, right? But hey, what if you guys actually owned, or if you know somebody that's trying to start a business, talk to them about starting a business and making it a worker co-op so that all of them and their co-workers can actually collectively own and operate it democratically. Like, try to foster that in rural areas. If you know somebody that, if you go to a farm, let's say you want to get your eggs, your meat, you want to get some of your produce, talk to them about having a co-op farm. Let's start to use our influence and our dollars to be able to influence more egalitarian systems on top of doing mutual aid. You never know. It can really help out. But yes. Did you guys take the poll? Go ahead and take the poll, because I really want to see you guys' thoughts about this, but I really do think this is part of the class war that we've been fighting against. Let's go ahead and take a look at the poll. Let's ride the poll. Not ride the poll, but you know what I mean. You know what I'm saying? All right. So, out of 116 votes, if you could work from home, would you? 100, yes, 100% work from home. 67% said yes. 3% said no, 100% work in the office. This is interesting, though. Okay, it just changed. 20% said hybrid work, 50-50 from home and office, and then 8% said not sure. So it's, a decent amount of people want to do hybrid, but most people want to work from home. And I get it. Because the thing is, it's like, look, as you see, I'm literally working from home right now. Right? And when I was working for the Jill Stein campaign, I was working from home. And let me tell you, I actually did long ass days. Like I would do like 14-hour shifts working for Jill Stein. Like if I was going to the office 8 hours and I'm done, I'm out. But I'm literally doing 14-hour days. But it's not just Jill Stein, but I'm doing that. I'm also doing work for RBN, and then I'm doing my channel. And so I'm doing 14-hour days of just juggling a network, my channel, and then the campaign. And the bulk of it was actually me working for the Stein campaign. But I'm doing like 14-hour days. That's why I was like extremely exhausted. But the thing is that working from home, you tend to also take less breaks because you just want to get it done. But your work-life balance and your stress is less. And who do I have to complain about when it came to work? I didn't really have to complain as much, because I don't have to see my fellow coworkers that often, except for a couple of Zoom meetings. Now, my coworkers that I was part of the campaign with were really great people. But let's say if I was working just in a private sector company in an office, you're working with people who may get on your nerves. But instead, if you're working from home, you don't have to be around them all the time. Or sometimes they want to know all this different stuff about your family and stuff. And you're just trying to keep it business. This is why we need a system where it favors the workers, not the people at the top. We're going to win this class war, even if we got to move out the cities to do it. Do your part. Work from home. Thank you so very much for watching my channel, and I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much, and you can watch more of my content here. Mwah. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.